Festival here at the Uniontown Mall in Fayette County, Pennsylvania. It is my pleasure right now to introduce storyteller Judy Tarowsky. Judy holds a Bachelor's of Science in Journalism from my alma mater, West Virginia University. Let's go Mountaineers. She was a reporter in Wheeling and in Steubenville, and she has received the Graduate Certificate in Storytelling from the University of North Texas. Judy has performed at various venues throughout West Virginia, and she co-chairs and performs at Grandview Park Storytelling Festival in Moundsville. Mark your calendar for that next year. The date has already been set for May 9th, Grandview Park in Moundsville. That is the Storytelling Festival. Judy will also be at the West Virginia Folk Festival, June 21st, and at Prickett's Fort, September 25th through 26th. School groups are welcome to come for that Storytelling Festival at Prickett's Fort, September 25th and 26th. You can learn more about Judy in your giveaway bags. There is a little postcard or bookmark with information about Tales Tall and True from Judy Tarowsky, our storyteller. We're so glad to have her here today. I'll turn the stage over to our storyteller, Judy Tarowsky. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here today. One other little thing about myself, I am now currently president of the West Virginia Storytelling Guild, and I send greetings to you from the Guild. And you might be thinking that, you don't sound like you're from West Virginia because you have such close ties to West Virginia. I want to tell you a little secret. I was born in Latrobe, and I grew up in Newcastle, so I'm kind of back in home territory here, and it's very nice to be here. I'd like to tell you a story that's an original story, one that's very special to me. It's based in West Virginia. It's based on things that have happened with my family and my husband's family, and I call it Gima's Shivaree. When Libby woke up and saw the tall ceiling above her, she remembered right away where she was. Gima's house. She threw back the faded quilt and jumped down out of the tall oaken bed, and her feet hit the cool linoleum floor. Gima's house. Why, today was the day that she'd been waiting for all summer. Today was the day of the family reunion. She quickly padded down the hall to the bathroom where she washed and dressed, and then she tiptoed down the stairs so she wouldn't wake her parents. And she found Gima in the kitchen, and Gima was having her coffee in her big white china cup. "Good morning, Libby," Gima said. "Did you have a good sleep?" "Oh, I always sleep well when I come here, Gima. It's so quiet here." "Well, that's why you won't find me living in the city," Gima said. "You can't hear yourself think." She noticed that Libby was shivering a bit. She said, "Yes, it's chilly around the edges this morning, Libby. You go sit in the dining room next to the gas stove. Now, what would you like for breakfast?" "Oh, I'd like a sunflower egg, please, Gima." "All right," Gima said. Gima took an egg from the refrigerator and cracked it into a worn tin poacher. Then she set it on the gas stove to cook. "Gima," Libby said, "why are we having this family reunion?" "Well," Gima said, "I'm not getting any younger, and this family's not getting any smaller. I just wanted to have something to get you all together before I'm gone." Libby shivered again this time, but it wasn't from the cold. "Oh, Gima, don't say that. I can't think of you not being here. I can't think of you being gone." Gima got the egg that was finished, and she scooped it out into Libby's favorite little dish. It was a rose dish with gold around the edges. Then she took a spoon and cut into the white around the egg to make petals. And the yellow from the yolk flowed out around the egg, and that made a sunflower egg. She set it down in front of Libby and kissed her on the forehead. She says, "Oh, I just want you kids to have something to remember." You mean like the stories you tell about when you were young?" "Oh, I suppose so," Gima said. Libby took a bite of egg, and then she said, "Gima, sometimes Mom says you can't dwell on the past. What does that mean?" "Well, Libby, your mom means that you can't spend today wishing it was yesterday. No, I'm not wishing it was yesterday when I tell you my stories, but I just think you should know what was behind you before you can move ahead in your life." Oh, I think you did some really neat things, Gima, Libby said. I wish I could do some of the things you did when you were young. Gima chuckled. No, I mean it, Gima, Libby said. Oh, you know, oh, like having a fire in the fireplace all the time, not just at Christmas, and making a quilt with a bunch of your friends, and making taffy, and having dinner on Sunday afternoon, and then going visiting and having a dance in someone's house instead of in a gym. You know, old-fashioned stuff. Horse feathers. Gima laughed. She says, didn't you and I make taffy? Oh, we did, Gima. That time that the weather wasn't right, and it stuck all over our hands. Oh, and Libby, the only way we could get it off was to eat it off. It's a wonder we didn't get sick. Oh, Libby, I just want your friends to, you and your cousins and your friends to have a good time today. Oh, we will, Gima, but I wish, you know, I just wish we could do some of the things you used to do because you sound so happy when you talk about them. I have good memories, Libby. That's why I sound happy. I am happy. And that's what you're hearing in my stories. But don't get me wrong. Life could be hard when I was a young woman. Well, if life was hard, why do you talk about it now? We had good friends. We had good friends that helped each other out. We took care of each other and we had fun together. We made our own fun. I have good memories about that. Oh, Gima, aren't memories just things that are stuck in your head? Oh, Libby. Memories are where our stories come from. Every time you do something and you remember it later, you're making a story, and stories are meant to be shared. And without stories, the people we knew and the things we did will be lost forever. I have good memories about all that. Now, you and your cousins just worry about having a good time today. Oh, I will, Gima, Libby said, and I know we're going to remember this day for a long, long time. Libby finished up her egg. She says, Gima, can I go up in the hill before everybody gets here? I'd like to go up there by myself. Well, of course, Gima said. Just watch out for snakes and poison ivy. Oh, I know, Gima, Libby said. I know what you taught me. And with that, Libby was out the back door. Gima's house was built into the side of a hill, and the hill sloped up to a ridge, and the ridge went up to a higher place where there were pine trees at the top, and there were rock outcroppings. And when Gima was younger, she would go up with Libby, and sometimes they'd have a picnic, and sometimes they would just spend the afternoon up there, just enjoying the quiet. But on this day, Libby went up by herself, and she had a very special place that was just hers. It was a rock outcropping that looked out over the valley below. And from there, she could sit and see the creek and see the farm beyond and the hills that folded over themselves into blue. She checked the rock for a snake, and not seeing one, she sat down and just listened to the peace. The pine trees gave off a Christmas tree smell that was kind of funny in the summertime. And all she could hear was the growl of a tractor across the valley where a farmer was working, and the occasional moo of a cow. And she thought about the time that the Gima told her that when she was a young girl, her brother John was sick and couldn't go out and milk the cow, and they had one cow named Plenty, and she was an ornery critter. So Gima had to put on John's jacket and hat and go out and try to milk that cow. Well, Gima said, I got the bucket under her. She didn't know any different. And I started milking her, and wouldn't you know it, I had to clear my throat. And that cow just took a fit, and she kicked that bucket. Milk went everywhere, and she started to scream and squall, and oh, I just got out of there with my life and ran back to the house. And even though John was upstairs sick in bed, Mama made him get up and go down and milk that cow, whether he was sick or not. And after that, it was just my turn to feed the chickens. That's all I had to do. And Libby thought about all the things that she and Gima had done, how they'd planted a garden together and how Gima had showed her to dig potatoes and pick beans and how to stake up the tomatoes and all the wonderful things they'd done together. And Libby said to herself, you know, when I'm big, I'm going to bring my kids up here. And I'm going to tell them Gima's stories and mine too, because this is going to be a very special day. It's a day I'm not going to forget. But I still wish we could do some of the things that Gima did, because she just sounds so happy when she talks about them. Then Libby heard the crunch of a tire on gravel, and she realized that people were pulling into the driveway. They're here, she said. So she jumped up from the rock and ran down the hillside. That afternoon, Libby counted about 27 people there at Gima's. Her father and her uncles were out in the yard setting up tables under Gima's great big maple trees. And they were setting up charcoal grills. And her mom and aunts and cousins were in the kitchen, and they were making potato salad, and they were slicing up tomatoes they'd picked from the garden. They were cleaning beans and getting them ready. And there were going to be hamburgers and hot dogs. Oh, it was going to be quite an event. And Gima was watching it all. She says, you know, this reminds me of the time when we had haying, and all the men would come in to help your great-granddad. The women, we would fix food, and we'd eat outside. You mean you had a picnic, Libby said? Oh, land child, we had to. You couldn't fit everybody in the house. And you know, your great-granddad never had trouble getting people to come help him with the haying, because I cut my pies into 6 pieces, not 8 like some women did. Speaking of eating, Gima said, we have to get those tables set. She says, now, can some of you young'uns come with me into the sitting room? There's some tablecloths up in the press next to the fireplace, and I can't reach them anymore. Sure, Gima, the kids said. So they went into the sitting room with Gima. The sitting room was kind of like a living room today. And next to the fireplace, there was a shallow closet with shelves, and it was called the press. And that's where Gima stored a lot of boxes. And she told the kids, she said, now, the box of tablecloths is up there on one of those upper shelves. Now, it might be underneath some other boxes, but be careful when you get them. I'll get it, Gima, one of the taller boys said. And as he reached up, the box slipped out of his hands. And it crashed to the floor at Gima's feet. And when it did, the lid came open. And Gima looked down. Oh my. I forgot that was in there. Because there on the floor was a yellowed tissue paper honeycomb bell folded in half. I forgot that was in there, Gima said. She says, why don't you just hand it to me gently? And Libby placed it in her hands, and Gima held it as though it were something asleep. Oh my, I forgot all about this. It's so old. Is that a Christmas decoration, Gima? One of the kids said, no, it's not a Christmas decoration. Oh, can we open it up and see it? No, it's too old. What's it from? If it's not Christmas, what's it from? Well, it was the decoration your great-granddad and I had when we got married. It was hung in that doorway right over there, and we stood under that doorway and got married. You got married in the house and not in church? Well, we had a minister, Gima said. And it was on this day. My anniversary's today. How could I forget? I suppose with all the fuss over the reunion, I didn't remember. But yes, we got married right over there. Did you have a wedding dress, Gima? No, I wore my Sunday dress. Oh, it was beautiful, it was blue, and I carried flowers we cut from my mama's garden. Well, where did everybody sit? Well, there weren't that many. There was my mama and daddy, and your great-granddad's mama and daddy, and their brothers and sisters, and that was it. And, well, did you have a reception afterwards? No, we didn't have the money and time for things like that. We had dinner, and we invited the minister to stay. And that was it. You mean you didn't have a reception? No, we didn't have a reception. What did you have, Gima? She thought a minute. Says, well, we had a shivaree. What's a shivaree? Well, some folks call it a serenade. And a shivaree, well, a few weeks after your great-granddad and I were married, we'd gone to bed for the night, and some of our friends borrowed a couple of cars, and they parked down the road so we wouldn't see or hear them. Then they sneaked up onto our porch, and then they started making a racket to beat the band. They had pots and pans they were beating on. They had wash tubs, and they had a big saw blade on a stick, and they were beating on it like a big gong, and they whooped and hollered, and of course we woke up. Did you call the police? One of the boys said, no, we didn't call the police. What did you do? Well, we invited them in, and I had a chocolate cake baked just in case, and we had lemonade, and we visited, and then they all went home. And that was our shivaree. You didn't know that people were coming in the middle of the night, one of the boys said. That is so cool. Well, Gima said, I guess we were cool. Oh, look at you. Your great-granddad will be so proud of this family. It's grown so much. Oh, but how could I forget? How could I forget? Oh, well, what am I thinking? This family needs fed. This family's getting hungry, so let's get these tablecloths set out there, kids, because we got to get cracking. Well, later that evening, everybody was gathered under those maple trees, and they'd eaten their fill, and all the cousins and Libby were over on the one table, and there was a lot of whispering and a lot of elbowing going on. And some of the grown-ups looked at Gima, and she was sitting at the table, but she looked tired and a little bit sad. Oh, this is too much for her. And the others said, oh, this was just too much. It was just, she shouldn't have done this. Oh, no, this was just too much for her. And Libby looked over, and she thought Gima looked like a wilted flower, a flower that needed water. Well, finally, Libby's father pushed himself away from the table, and he said, well, he said, I'm so full I can't move, and since I can't move, let's do a game of horseshoes. Who's up for some horseshoes? So some of the adults stood up, and they went off to the horseshoe pitch. Meanwhile, the cousins got up from their table, and they approached Libby's father, and Libby said, Daddy, can we be excused, please? Sure, Libby, he said. Don't you want to play horseshoes with us? No, Daddy, we want to go hunt lightning bugs. Are you sure, Libby? He said. Oh, yeah, Daddy, we'd much rather hunt lightning bugs. He said, well, all right. He said, now, you be careful going up on that hill. There might be wolves. Oh, Daddy, she said, and ran off with her cousins. So before long, there was the clang of horseshoes as the adults played their game. And some of the other adults sat around and visited, and Gima sat and watched them. But suddenly there was a new sound, a clanging and a banging coming from the kitchen door. Happy anniversary, Gima! Happy shivaree! As all the cousins came marching out of the kitchen. And they were carrying pots and pans and whatever they could find, and they were making noise with it. Happy anniversary, Gima! Happy shivaree! And they marched around the picnic tables, and they marched around Gima. And Gima threw her hands in the air, and they couldn't tell if she was laughing or crying. Happy anniversary, Gima! Bang! Crash! Clash! And around they marched. Until finally, Gima held her hands up for quiet, and she picked up her apron and wiped her eyes. Well, she was crying, but she was laughing. Well, as the noise quieted down, some of the other adults and Libby's father came down, and he said, what on earth was that? Gima said, I think it was a shivaree, and it was a dandy one, too. It was Libby's idea, one of the boys said. I'm not surprised, Gima said, but whatever for? Libby said, well, we felt bad that you couldn't celebrate your anniversary anymore. And your shivaree sounded like the best part of your wedding, so we thought you could use another one. Oh, it was wonderful, Grandma said. And I thank you very much. She said, come here, all of you. And the children gathered around. She said, I want to thank you. This was the best anniversary gift I could ever have. And what made it so special is because it came from all of you. Thank you again. Libby's father said, well, I don't think we're ever going to forget this family reunion. And Libby said, I'm going to remember it for a long, long time. And Yima said, I know you will. And she brushed her hands on her apron and then she stood up. She says, now, who's ready for some chocolate cake? Yima shivered. Do I have time for another one? Do I have time for another one? Okay. Thank you. You're a wonderful audience. Need to take a drink here. Okay. For a quick one here. Okay. Let me think. There has to be a dragon. There has to be. When you're doing stories, there has to be a dragon. This is the Dragon of Long Whitton. This is an English story, and I like it because there's a dragon. There was a little village by the name of Long Whitton, and it was a quiet village. There were farms around it, and farmers grazed their sheep, and it was very famous for one particular thing. It had some wells. Now, the wells weren't the gas wells that we're seeing today. They were water wells. And there were 3 of them. They had some stone walls built around them. And the townspeople took very good care of the wells. They kept the grass trimmed for a very special reason. The water in those wells, oh, it was very special. It was sweet and it was so refreshing. And sometimes when the shepherds came in after tending their flocks on a cold winter night, they would ache from the cold. And if they drank that water, they would get well. And many a child in the town when they were ill, would drink some of the water and they would get better. So the people were very, very proud of their wells, and people traveled from great distances to drink that water. Well, one day, one of the farmers had been out plowing, and he was very hot and thirsty, and he stopped by the well. And to his horror, there was a dragon. A dragon had curled itself around one of the wells, and it had its tongue down in it, lapping up the water like a dog. Well, the minute the dragon saw the man, it became invisible. But the farmer had seen it long enough to realize that that dragon was nearly as tall as the trees. It had green, scaly back and spines going up its back, and it had long front claws. And even though he couldn't see it, he could feel its hot breath on him, and he could hear the leaves crunching under its feet. So he ran back to the town to tell everybody about the dragon. Of course, everybody was just outraged. They ran out and confronted the dragon. But immediately he made himself invisible again. And they couldn't see where he was, but they knew he was around the well because they could see the flowers being crushed. And they could hear him lapping up that water with his tongue. Well, sad to say, no one could drink any of that water, and the people suffered. The shepherds who had aches and pains after being out in the cold had to make do without the water, and children had to make do without the water that helped them feel so much better. And of course, the grass and the flowers around the wells grew up, and it became very shaggy and unkempt. And they could never get rid of that dragon. Till one day, a knight rode into town, and he had a sword at his side, and he had a great lance, and he was looking for a quest. Well, immediately the townspeople said, "There's a dragon out by our well, and we cannot get rid of it. Can you help us?" "I am a knight. I have my sword and I have my lance. I will take care of that dragon. I will go out and kill it immediately." So the knight rode his horse out to the wells. And before the dragon made itself invisible, the knight could see that indeed it was fearsome, it was tall, and it had the scales and the spines, and it had great teeth, and he could feel its hot breath on him. And the knight tried to charge it with his sword, but since he couldn't see it, he made no mark on that dragon. He said, "Well, I will come back tomorrow, and I will do better. I will kill that dragon." So the next morning, the knight took some magic ointment he'd gotten on his travels that he put on his eyes that would enable him to see the dragon. And he rode out again to fight it. And sure enough, the ointment worked. And even though the dragon tried to make itself invisible, the knight could see him. And the knight charged him with his sword, and he charged him with his lance. And even though the knight did strike some blows, they had no effect. They healed up immediately. And the knight fought the dragon all day without any result. Well, at the end of the day, the knight was very weary. He said, I will come back tomorrow, and tomorrow I will kill that dragon. So the next day, he put the ointment again on his eyes, and he went out, and he could see that dragon around the wells. And once again, he charged the dragon with his lance and swung at it with his sword. And even though he did strike it a particularly severe blow that he thought surely would have killed it, the dragon recovered. The knight withdrew and he said, said, tomorrow I will come out and I will use my eyes and my brain instead of my sword, and I will kill that dragon. So the next day, the knight came out with the ointment on his eyes, and as he watched the dragon, he realized why whatever blow he gave it had no effect. The dragon had managed to put his tail down into the well, and as long as it touched that water, the water healed all his wounds. So the knight got off his horse and tied the horse off some distance and approached the dragon with his sword, and he stabbed at it and enraged it. So the dragon came forward, and the knight fell back. And he stabbed at it again, and the dragon came forward, and again the knight fell back. Further and further from the wells until the dragon's tail was out of the water. The knight immediately mounted his horse and rode around to get between the dragon and the wells. And this time, he struck the fatal blow. And when the dragon fell and its blood fell on the ground, the blood made the flowers burst into flame. The knight went to get the townspeople, and they came out and saw the dragon's body there. And they were so happy, and they took it off and buried it. Then they immediately cleaned up the area around the wells, got everything tidy again. So once again, the people could drink that sweet, healing water. So that is the story of the Dragon of Longwitten and the knight who realized that it's not always the sword that wins the battle, but sometimes it's the eyes and the brain. Thank you. Good. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience, and I've really appreciated being here at the Literary Festival. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a round of applause for Judy Tarowsky, storyteller.